Hey everybody, if you enjoy the podcast and the content it provides, be sure to hop over and check out the community. The community is an exclusive members website that is just an extension of what we do here in July at the Central Virginia Sport Performance Seminar. What it is a combination of video lectures, a coach's corner with your Monday morning take-home information, and a forum where you can talk about anything and everything related to the field of strength and conditioning. In the community, you'll find content added each month from some of the top practitioners in the world, ranging from PhDs to high-level coaches, bringing you exactly what they're doing with their athletes or their research at the present moment. On top of that, an additional discussion by coaches bringing you that Monday morning information, things that you can add to your training program right away. Tying that in with the opportunity to discuss with coaches around the world in the forum on anything and everything from the topics addressed in these presentations to whatever you're seeing in your daily life as a coach. If this sounds like the right thing for you and your staff, go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and try it out for 48 hours for just $1. If you like it, you're signed up, ready to roll, and you're jumping into all the great content added each month. If not, feel free to go ahead and cancel at any time. No questions asked. We're really excited about what we're building in the community and hope you are too. Go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and check it out today.
Hey everybody, Matt Thome from Michigan Tech here. Just wanted to film a quick My Thoughts Monday on the topic of specificity. I wanted to talk about this because I've seen, quite a bit more lately, and I guess it's, probably all the time. We see people talking about specific training or specialized exercises, and it seems like there's a kind of a polarized opinion on the topic in our field, and I think that that's good. And where these disagreements are is where we can grow as a field. So I just wanted to kind of chip in my 2 cents about specificity because I hadn't seen many people talk about the actual definition of specificity or anything in any of their arguments. A lot of people talk about if we're not playing the sport, then it's not specific. It's not specific training if it's not in competition or in the sport. And sure, obviously playing the sport is the most specific thing that we could do, and anything outside that is going to be general. But obviously, there are shades of gray within this. We could look at a couple of exercises. We could look at a bench press and running 10 miles, and then applying those to different athletes. We have a shot putter. Obviously, one of those exercises or training means is going to be more specific, and one of them is going to be probably never used because it is so general. Whereas for an endurance athlete, we could see the opposite scenario. At the same time, we could look at things that we do in the weight room, even velocity-based movements and Olympic lifting movements that are slightly more specific than some other things that we do in the weight room, and say that the velocities that we're achieving in those exercises are nowhere near the velocities that we'd see in sport, which is also true, right? So let's take a step further and kind of look at some of the definitions. And there are 3 people that I know that have kind of defined specificity or specialized exercises. And there are others, and there are probably other ways to define it as well. Dr. Yessis is one who probably simplifies things the best, provides us with the most practical definition and just says, that a specialized exercise has to duplicate the same neuromuscular pathway as used in the sport skill. Now, if we take it kind of a step deeper than that and look at Dr. Bondarchuck's exercise classification system, he breaks it down a little bit more in a little bit more detailed way. So he has GPE exercises or general preparatory exercises as the most general, which is basically just work capacity. Very general, not used, or movements that are not used in the sport at all. But again, just building work capacity, super general training. The next category is specialized preparatory exercises. These are movements that use the same muscle groups as seen in the sport skill, but not necessarily in the same way, not necessarily in the same range of motion, and they don't necessarily look like what we're doing in sports. So these would be a lot of the movements that we would classify as general exercises: squat, bench press, rows, Olympic lifts. These are all specialized preparatory exercises. Taking it one step further, we have specialized developmental exercises. These now begin to not only use the same muscle groups that are used in the sporting action or in the competitive exercise, but they use them in the same ranges of motion, and they may duplicate a portion of the sports skill or the whole action. And this is kind of where we get back to Dr. Yessis in his definition. When he talks about specialized exercises, he's talking about specialized developmental exercises and then things that are even more specific than that. A good example of this, or a great example of this, would be what Jay described in the coach's corner with the pawback exercise. We're looking at training the leg extensors, so the glutes and hamstrings, exactly as they're used in the running movement, in the pawback action in the running movement. So just one particular aspect of that motion. We could also do the knee drive exercise from Dr. Yessis, another good example of a specialized developmental exercise that really just duplicates one part of the running motion. Taking it to that next degree of specificity, in Dr. Bondarchuck's classifications, we have competitive exercises. When I teach this to my students in my classes, I usually kind of have a separation between competitive exercises and the competition exercise. Competitive exercises could be the competition movement, so they could be exactly what you're doing. In Dr. Bondarchuck's case, that would be throwing the competition weight hammer. That could be considered an exercise. Typically, a competition exercise is defined as the competition movement in easier or more difficult circumstances. So this could also be sprinting uphill, sprinting with a sled, sprinting downhill would be easier conditions, things of that nature. So now we're getting closer and closer to actually duplicating what we're doing in sport, but making it slightly different. Okay, so within that we have a broad range and a lot of gray area. Some things are more specific, some things are less specific or more general. Taking it maybe even a step further, we can look at Dr. Verkhoshansky's dynamic correspondence, who breaks it down. He has 5 criteria for that, and kind of paraphrasing or simplifying, he defines dynamic correspondence or things that are specific to the competitive exercise, in different ways. So it could be using the same muscle groups, using the same ranges of motion, the same emphasis portion of the range of motion. So with that one, it would be the example of the knee drive that I gave earlier of the specialized developmental exercise. With the knee drive, how Dr. Yessis describes it, we actually emphasize the portion of the range of motion where the hip flexors are most active, which is behind the body, rather than training them where they're less active in front of the body. So just training them in a general way is fine, but if we want to get more specific, we have to train the portion of the range of motion where those muscle groups are most active and most used. We can also, so we have same muscle groups, same range of motion, same emphasis portion of the range of motion, same type of muscular contraction, so eccentric, isometric, concentric. And then the last one is basically the speed of the movement, the force output of the movement. That one's important too, especially when we look at plyometrics. Okay, the shock method was actually invented. Verkhoshansky actually came up with the shock method because he was looking to fulfill that aspect of dynamic correspondence with his triple jumpers. He found that the force in the last impact before takeoff in the triple jump was upwards of 300 kilos, and he couldn't have him squat over 700 pounds. It wasn't working out. So he used the kinetic energy of the falling body to actually duplicate those same forces that are seen in the last impact before they take off in the triple jump. So when we look at dynamic correspondence and all these different definitions, we'll see that the only place where all 5 criteria are fulfilled is in the competition movement or when we're playing the sport. That's going to be the most specific thing, obviously. But this doesn't mean that just fulfilling one aspect of dynamic correspondence or several is a bad thing. It doesn't mean that that doing only fulfilling a few of those is completely general. There are shades of gray in between. Okay, so we can use some specific exercises, we can use some that are more general, and we can train the entire continuum in between. And all of those are going to show improvement. The general exercises are still going to be useful because you need some sort of novelty to continue to progress. Specialized exercises, as the athlete increases in qualification, as Bondarchuck showed us in his transfer training books, the specialized exercises are going to come into play because they're going to have more transfer as we increase in qualification within that sport or within that event. Early on, the general exercises are going to have more transfer. Later on, we have to become more specific. But that doesn't mean, again, that the general exercises are useful. They're still going to be in place. When we talk about change and we talk about novelty. But again, looking at these definitions of specificity, I think that we can't just say if we're not playing the sport, it's not specific. We have a large continuum of different exercises that we can use. We have a lot of ways to define specificity, and we can use these tools to our advantage, especially as our athletes progress. So I think that we need to look at the problem of specificity a lot more seriously. If it's transfer that we're after, then we absolutely have to increase specificity as our athletes adapt to training. Okay, thank you, and let me know if anybody has any questions on this, and I'd be happy to discuss it further.